All right, everyone, we are back. Day one, or the first couple of days here, demo days. So our big goals here is we want to get rid of carpet, trim. I want to take down as many walls as we can if we're going to remove walls. So in this one, we're going to remove all the carpet. I want to get that old laminate out that you're going to see that kind of shiny brown. We also want to pull all of the baseboards, all the exterior trim, anything up top that we're going to grab, and then we're going to try to get rid of that whole kitchen island, the bar top thing. Something you're not going to see totally in the video is I only filmed this room, but we are doing demo on the rest of the rooms, which all have carpet in them also. So does the hallway. So we pulled carpet from the entire house today. We pulled all of the baseboard trim from the entire house, any door trim, and then we tried to pull any doors that we weren't going to keep. We actually ended up keeping the 2-bedroom doors and the master bedroom door upstairs, which is our first house ever because they were pretty cool. And then we just painted those things white. So now we're going to step in to doing this kitchen island. I remember this being quite the pain in the ass. Just the way they did it, it was just overkill like everything else, and had some electrical in here we had to be really careful of. And we went through and turned off most of the power, but also tried to keep as much light on as possible just because, again, it's December and it's just so dark out. Regardless of what it looks like in the video, it was pretty dark here on this. And then when Briggs went through and removed all the tack strips from the carpet, we also, too, later, I think it should be filmed also, before we put floors down, we cleaned the floor really well, and then we put a special sealer on there because this house actually smelled terrible, like pet urine, dog urine, whatever it was. It was absolutely disgusting. That's what all those stains in the floor are actually. If you zoom in, you might be able to see some of those. There we go. So all those dark spots in the floor are just pet pee stains, which is nasty. I'm working on taking out one of the posts really quick. That's an easy one. There's nothing inside, not structural. The other post is actually a little bit more difficult. It's got plumbing and electrical, and we'll address that a little bit later. Right there, boom, that's my other work crew. That's my mom. She's retired, and she helps on quite a bit of this. She does a lot of our painting, trim work, caulking, just kind of a master of all trades. In about a few seconds here, you're also going to meet the last crew member, my dad. He's going to discover the camera here in a second. He's kind of the guy that we bounce all the questions off of. About 40 years ago, 35 years ago, him and my mom built their own house pretty much from the ground up. So he's someone that's really good for me to bounce ideas off of, especially electrical and structural stuff, as he was a mechanical engineer his whole life. And speaking of electrical, during demo here is actually where we discovered one of the first electrical problems. There's like a ghost switch here at the top of the stairs. You're going to see in a second. I'll point it out. And we went around and tested, and I couldn't figure out any of the outlets, thinking they might be switched outlets, which was common back in the day. But again, couldn't figure it out. It wasn't until a couple days later I realized it was one of the switched outlets. There you can see with the green arrows. However, one of the wires on the inside of the outlet was just capped off because they decided to wire both receptacles like a regular outlet now. I will say, just from my limited experience, I think the biggest issue on flips that we run into time-wise, things that aren't like natural degradation like water damage or stuff like that, is actually homeowner DIY electrical issues. A couple flips ago, we actually ended up having to pull all of the wire out of a basement and rewire it entirely just because it was so incorrect. And things just can't be a fire hazard for us, so that's like a big priority. I mean, it's one thing to do a bad job framing. It's one thing to do a bad job painting or caulking. Electrical just has such a safety issue to it that it's just a no-brainer. So people, please don't do your own electrical if you have no idea what you're doing. Not that I'm some sort of self-professed professional electrician, but anywhere that's necessary, we still go by the code book. We pull permits. We always pass our permits, obviously, so that when we go to sell the houses, we can say, hey, look, we pulled the permit. Everything's above board. We're good to go. Later in this, I actually do all the electrical in our houses, except we are going to replace the panel in this house, and I am going to call someone to do that. That feels a little bit above my head. I want to do it properly. I want to get it permitted and get a code guy out here and everything, get it all inspected. So for us, if we can't do it correctly, we always definitely hire it out. I think something also to consider is not just will I pass, the county or the city inspections, because again, that's like the lowest level of standards that you have to pass. A lot of times you get a guy that's busy, he comes out there, takes a glance, yep, you're good. I would look at it as the most stringent home inspector going to pass this, right? And not just my work, but the work before me. So we always go through and make sure, is all the water damage fixed? Is all the electrical fixed? We test every outlet. We usually replace every outlet in the house anyways, just because, again, outlets degrade, they go bad. A nice shiny white outlet also looks a lot better than some kind of toasted brown outlet, especially if it has some gross burn marks. Get rid of it, test the wire, Repull wire if you need to, whatever it takes. Just make sure your houses are structurally sound. There's no water damage. There's no electrical damage. I mean, especially for me, we have 2 little kids. So I say, and my wife thinks the same thing. We're going to sell this house, and would we live here? Our big thing is, would we live here? And it's always yes. So I think a lot of people are like, let's slap some floors, some paint, and just get the hell out of here, and get this thing sold. But it just doesn't feel right. So that's why we only usually do about 2 to 3, possibly 4 flips a year. We're not one of the big guys. We take our time. We go slow. We're a smaller crew. We do all the work ourselves. But again, we just want to make sure it's done right, from the trim all the way down to the electrical. And for me, it's just the way I operate. Obviously, we flip houses because there can be good money in it, and that's the fun part. But the more fun part is to say, hey, look, take pride in your ownership. And when you're all done, take some pictures and say, hey, look, I made that. And that was one of the reasons, the inspirations for us to do these videos, to kind of look back on, one, for everyone to show off, like, hey, look at the cool work we did, but also for ourselves, like, wow, that was super awesome. Like, that's something to be proud of. All right, so here's where the big guns come in. This is my wife and kids. So Jen does all of our design work. Pretty much everything, lays everything out. We just hammer up the nails. So me and her are discussing right here when we went outside what we're going to do with this deck. And so this is the part that we talked about earlier. All of that in the green arrows is totally coming out. We'll put some stairs right down to the old concrete that used to be there. It's in great shape. And here's the kids measuring out the floor to see who knows what. But Jen and I are actually measuring out and designing the kitchen island right here and seeing what's going to work from that to see how we're going to make all of the new island fit. All right, now that everything is cleared out, I can show you what Jen and I were drawing on the ground earlier when we were planning out that new kitchen island. The goal here is to maximize counter space, but also not feel too cramped when multiple people are walking around the kitchen. We were planning for 42 inches of space between the cabinets and the island. This leaves us plenty of space to open the fridge or cabinets and still walk by at the same time. However, we made a bit of a mistake here in our drawing and later had to shrink the entire island by about 4 inches. This took our overhang where the seating will be from 16 to 12 inches. The reason for this is because after calling around to our counter suppliers, we realized we were going to have to purchase a jumbo slab with tons of leftover counters that we couldn't do anything with. Instead, we opted to shrink the counter size to fit their standard island sizes that they have in stock. Overall, this saved us about $700 right off the bat, and we didn't feel the extra 4 inches was going to be worth the $700 in additional cost, considering the counter's entire price is only around $3,200 for everything, and that includes the sink cutouts, the whole sink areas, everything by the fridge. And it was right about here towards the end when I busted my phone out and I realized that we started to mess up on the kitchen island measurements, and I think that's where we had to start to kind of redoing things here. We also went ahead and we're measuring for where the can light location should be on the ceilings, because we're going to go ahead and add cans, because again, for some reason, older houses have this weird obsession with switched lamps in the corners, but that just doesn't meet modern standards. So we're going to put a light in the middle, and then we're going to put 4 cans up. I think we're going to start with 4 cans and then see if that's good enough. And if not, we'll go ahead and pop a light in the middle. Again, this living room isn't super huge, so it might just work out with the 4 cans. We're also going to take the 3 lights out of the kitchen, as you can see. So the kitchen right now is not very big. It has 3 separate lights in it with 3 separate light switches, 1 for each. So we'll make it 2 light switches, 1 for over the sink, as you can see over there, and then 1 for the 6 can lights that we'll put in the kitchen. And then we'll keep that dining room light as is. We'll just obviously change the light fixture out on it. And then again, this is why we haven't taken that post out where Jen was just standing against, because you can see it's got a black pipe. Thankfully, I'm pretty sure it's only the vent pipe for downstairs toilet, nothing else. The sinks downstairs go to the sinks upstairs, so it should be a relatively easy fix. And then the electrical is just a matter of maybe putting a junction box in the attic and then dropping that wire down into the hallway wall there around the corner to the right. And then we'll add a new light switch there. So it'll be 1 light switch to do all 6 cans. And then when you walk over to the sink, it'll be a separate light switch to do the light over the sink next to the garbage disposal light switch as well. So super common stuff. So in regards to house flipping, I think if you're in it for the right reasons, you want to do a good job, you take pride in your work, I think you're just going to be naturally successful at it, irregardless of what the market's doing. Obviously, you want to buy right. But again, do a really good job. There's always going to be a market for those top-end homes where things just fit and the work looks really solid. All right, and then just to finish up here, I'll go ahead and let the time lapse do its thing and get out of your ear for a minute. And then towards the end, you can check out somewhat of a disaster water-wise that we had towards the end of the demo day here. So stick around for that. All right, and as promised, here is our big water issue to end the day. As I was cleaning up, the guy from the water company, he showed up to turn our water back on. I went outside, met with him. We chit-chatted for a while. After he turned it back on, I heard a lot of water flowing. But again, I thought that was the gutters because they have a lot of holes in them. It was downpouring rain. Me and him were chatting in the garage. After he left, I finished up, cleaned up a little bit in the garage, cleaned up the truck, got it all loaded up. Then when I went back inside, it was not the gutters. So I'll show you here in a second, but again, when the water gets turned back on in any old house, I suppose, always go check. We ended up disconnecting the water line from the fridge on the bottom left, but we forgot to turn it off under the sink. So huge lesson learned. Again, thanks for watching along all the way to the end. Like, subscribe, and check us out next time. And here it is.